Night. I don't remember. Night. Oh, yeah. Night.
Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to Workin on the Night Moon. This is our weekly recap of the Disney series Moon Knight. We are on episode 5. My name is Smokin Phat J.
Matt, Christy.
All right, we are here to recap the 5th episode titled
The Asylum.
The Asylum. Make sure that you like and subscribe to Canoodle Studios on all the things, and do the stuff and click the bells and do all that shit. But we're gonna go right into this episode. Spoilers for anyone and everyone who hasn't seen this episode. But hopefully we'll have some interesting conversation about this episode.
And trigger warning if you haven't seen this episode.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. This is like one of the valid ones.
Yeah.
That they do. That they should be doing.
Just one.
One episode left.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yep. Got all that anxiety.
We got a lot of them going on. Let's go around as we do and just give our general feeling of how we felt about this episode, and we will dip into anything and everything we can think of, and we'll do our meme dump at the end.
Make us feel better.
I feel like we should end with you. Let's end with Christy today, because I feel like he's got a lot to say.
That's fine.
Kopp, you want to start? How do you feel about this episode?
Can't hear Kopp.
So far. This is Moon Knight again. This is a Moon Knight series, really with that Moon Knight. I really technically this whole episode takes place in his head, so it's hard to give it a lot of weight or gravity. But when we're talking about somebody dealing with why they have created multiple personalities and what sort of human would feel the need to create that, which I'm sure we'll go into here, is pretty spot on. It's pretty spot on. And let's just say, like, certain people of certain age groups and certain family backgrounds might relate a little heavier to this episode than some of you kids out there. Nothing wrong with that. What was considered a very natural form of parenting doesn't really exist anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So we'll get into it. We'll gush here a little bit and talk a little more here and there. But yeah, it's my favorite episode of the series so far.
Yeah, I have to say the same. This was my favorite, even though very little Moon Knight. But the reason I like they brought so many answers to the questions, and the answers were very tough to deal with, but made a ton of sense. Not only that, one little thing about it too, like the whole Harrow being, and we'll get deep into this, I'm sure, but Harrow being his doctor in this, but like by the end I was like, well, that's just a placeholder for, like, yeah, I mean, they left it ambiguous at the end, but still it seemed like, okay, yeah, you made this guy the doctor in your head. He's not the bad guy. You're making him the bad guy, though. Whether it's reality or whatever's we've seen for the last 5 episodes is real or not, like, this is all something that you're doing inside your head to cope for all these things. And I mean, I gotta say, like, big tearjerker. Like, I watched this with my kid this morning, and I was just like, Well, okay, this was a rough episode to get through. There was a lot. There was a lot.
Yeah, I watched this early in the morning as I was going into work, and that was a bad idea. That was a terrible, terrible idea. Yeah, the episode was wonderful, but what happened in the episode just...
Sorry, I guess we lost Kopp there for a little bit. We'll let you recap it again real fast after Pat's done. Sorry.
That's all right.
So, yeah, first off, I don't think we even got that on air, but this episode was what I thought it was going to be last week when we talked about it, but I forget if that part made it to air or the part that got cut off because we got cut off early, we found out later.
I was absolutely right on everything I said, too.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, even though I was 1,000% wrong on everything I said.
On a ship on the way to the underworld, duet. Whether or not the psychiatrist in Harrow's office was real at any point in time, or it was a construct of when he did self-admit, mixed with things that happened after that, it's unknown, and it's purposely left ambiguous that way, and it works wonderfully. Because it's one of those situations where you hate it if this was all a dream or in somebody's head, just in general, but this is one of those ones where it could actually be both, and it works either way because it's so well written, and Oscar Isaac acts it so well with every single character that he plays.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So go ahead and kind of recap your feelings again quickly, James, because I don't think your mic was working properly that first time.
Yeah, no, it's my favorite episode so far of the show. It's we'll get into more of the details of it. It is kind of what we would call a cop-out episode, where it's like all in his head, all in a fake asylum, which is dumb, cliche writing, plot devicey, stupid things. It works really well here because like Identity or Fight Club or anything where we're dealing with multiple strong characteristics that live in one person, going into their head to have them battle it out makes the most sense. And rather than battle it out in this episode, it really is trying, in my opinion, one person hiding their past so they don't have to deal with it, while the other person has to learn about their past so that they can deal with who they are. And that to me is just like a super that's an exciting 43 minutes of television for the paid television access. So y'all didn't see it in Florida. It was really good. So you missed out.
I'd like to really quickly, dissociative identity disorder is a term that relates to someone who has been clinically diagnosed as having at least two distinct personalities that are separate from each other and exist apart from each other. Usually it is born out of some sort of trauma that happens in a person's youth, although not exclusive to them being young, but some sort of trauma causes something in the psyche to splinter and create different people to cope in different ways or to serve different functions to help the person get through.
Right.
And this episode, if you've never seen anything on it, does a good job, if not great job, of showing what things can happen and how it actually truly is. That the Steven character is completely separate from Mark and does not know anything that happens to the Mark character.
Okay, I want to talk on that for a second, because that was one part of this episode that was a little confusing to me. Was, this is cutting to the end, but when we finally get into that bedroom where we have Mom break into the room, she's drunk, she's just said awful things to him, now she's going to beat him. But he turns into Steven at that point, which I felt like the way it was presented was Mark took the bad shit and protected Steven from it, but it seemed like Mom came in and then beat Steven. Was Steven just able to compartmentalize that better than Mark was? Or was that like a weird like thing that they just said, well, we want this scene to happen and for this reason?
So the term for Mark is either host or core personality. And basically what happened in the scene was that Steven was created, obviously based upon the movie that he and his brother used to love watching. If you notice in the scene, Steven, the boy Steven, never really noticed the mother. Steven wasn't aware that the mother was in the room at any point in time.
Or on the phone ever. And I think...
the phone part is something different, but I'm talking about when she breaks into the room, he never turns his attention to her because Steven never notices anything outside of what he himself is doing right then and there.
Right.
So when she does start beating him, the Mark character, or the Mark persona, does essentially come back, and that is why Mark ushers Steven out of the room, is because Steven never noticed it was happening because it really was only happening to Mark.
Right. I think that was foreshadowed with the phone calls throughout the series to Mom, where, you know, there was obviously, it was just him talking to a machine, you know what I mean? Where he's just having kind of his own conversation to it. It was like he escapes into this realm of, you know, like you said, I'm only seeing this portion of what's happening in life right now, and everything else I'm shielded from, kind of.
Yeah, so. I mean, even in DID patients, it's not always a thing that each of the what they're called alters. Each of the alters know anything about what the other alters do or don't do.
Right.
Sometimes the host can be aware of what some of the alters are doing, or they get it through psychiatric help because or
a giant hippo makes them talk to each other.
Exactly. You know? or you meet yourself in real life. But
you gotta balance your shit, bro.
But so that's why Steven was so unaware of everything, because Steven, as the persona, as the altered, wasn't aware of anything other than what was happening to Steven in his life. Other things that have happened in this series, if you go back and look at it, which is significant to this episode. Episode 1, he talks to the girl who's leaving gum on the pyramid statue. And she makes the comment that he questions him, is he never going to go to the field of reeds?
Why was he, how did it feel to get banished or something like that?
To never reach the field of reeds. And he says, what are you talking about? I'm not dead.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 2, he gets his name taken away from him, metaphorically, by having the name badge taken away. The entire series has been leading up to this without us knowing of Steven being slowly erased, because whether or not Steven's fulfilled the purpose that he was created for in the first place, that's kind of where it's ending up.
Maybe he served his purpose.
Yeah.
Right. I loved so much of this episode. I thought it answered so many, like, deep questions that I think were put forth in this, even to the point to where something that James said, I think the last couple weeks, where it's like, you know, fucking gods exist. Like that moment where he is drunk outside of his mom's Shiva, right? Mm-hmm. And he takes his yarmulke off and he smashes it into the ground. But then he instantly is like, oh, wait a minute. Like he's upset and emotional, but he's like, Jesus probably fucking exists too, because there's a bird god that I belong to, you know, like just those things. Also, when Taweret talks about the afterlife. Oh, this isn't the afterlife.
Yeah.
This is an afterlife. Yeah. I think that like a lot of the questions that each of us have had over the last 4 episodes, you know, were mostly answered in this episode. You know what I mean? They left a couple things, obviously, to deal with. They also set up a couple things with, like, Bushman and just kind of the continuation of the character that I think are interesting too. But man, I really enjoyed it. I have to say there were 3 different times that both times I watched it, I got at very least choked up on, that were just heartbreaking, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
felt genuine. It didn't feel like they were trying to do things to me. It felt like this was a natural progression of where we should be going in this conversation that we're having over the last few episodes. I had very little bad to say about this at all, you know.
I'm gonna make a quick prediction.
Go ahead.
That will either I'll love these writers that did this, or these writers aren't as smart as I think they are. Which is Ethan Hawke's plan to kill everybody. No one will exist who's ever committed a major crime, who really has hate in their heart. That's an impossibility. Like, if you do that, everybody in every family line that ever existed had somebody horrible along the ways.
Right.
Somebody that was like, I don't know, slavery's pretty great. You know, like whatever. It's me, Bill the rapist. So, you know, and if that person never existed, if they didn't get the chance to be born, that means every child and thing after them didn't exist.
Right.
Which, if next episode, because we got to see, spoiler again, we'll get into the whole thing, but we got to see that like the plan is coming true that Ethan Hawke wants to do. If Moon Knight gets back to Earth and there are no humans anymore on Earth, these writers are amazing. If there's half the humans and half that aren't, so. Like, because I don't think they're taking into account how
God damn
serious.
Well,
I need a quick little aside. We have
right.
to do a thing on Doom Patrol, at least season 1, because I'm leaving it there. I'm gonna leave it there. But anyways, go on.
well, I just want to intercede here myself and say that we've already the series has already proven that the Arthur Harrow that we've known, that's not the psychiatrist, is full of shit for them in part because is he really killing off the people that are bad, or is he purposely saving people he wants around and saying he's doing everything else in the name of Amit?
Also, another possibility is Amit just tricking him. Like, I think another interesting way to go is Harrow used to be a pawn for Khonshu, and then he got smart, and then he went to Amit, but play him a pawn again.
Or thought he got smart.
You know what I mean? Or thought he did.
Yeah.
But play him a pawn again, where Amit, again, we talked about this with the old lady and the other dude in like episode 1 or 2, right? It's where, like, is he getting rid of this old lady because she cannot be a soldier for the cause?
Yeah.
And is she keeping able-bodied, fanatic because he is?
They also
All interesting questions. One little prediction real quick, though.
Yeah.
Next episode's the last episode. Fighty, punchy.
Well,
The beginning, at the beginning, we have a little tie-in to all these existential things that we've had. And at the end, we're going to have a continuance of the potential for these existential things. But in the middle, what's her name saves Khonshu. He gets the fucking suit. He gets healed. Some fighty, punchy, purple sky.
well, they've already shown in the trailers that there's still fighty, punchy, purple sky left in the show. So.
Sure.
I just want to make sure we all understand, if somebody is killed before they're born, they're not allowed to exist. They don't have kids. So if they're like, oh, when we do it, it's going to start from now, that's one way. And that's easier. But if they're like, I'm doing it for all time, which is like what they keep hinting at, then it's like, cool, there should be no humans on Earth.
Miranda has the idea, I still think we might have Layla Khonshu at the end of this. Like, I mean, and this goes into the supposed rumors that Oscar Isaac signed on for this series, and he's not doing another one. But
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, maybe he could still die. Die. His character could still really die by the end of the series. So.
And I think that's such an interesting thing for Marvel to do at this point. You have 100 characters that you can tell one good story with. Let's be honest. Moon Knight, as the character that they've presented, you're gonna have a tough time making that not just be Batman, and from what's been written, and to make people happy, because we know comic book people just latch on to whatever the fuck they want from the comics. But if you do a whole new thing with a whole new avatar of Khonshu based on the stuff you like about Khonshu in the comics, I think that's an interesting way to go. Especially reintroducing your Daredevils, your Punishers, your Luke Cages. You know, you could really have this Moon Knight fit in to what I think Marvel would like to do and create these levels of heroes, you know, which is what we love from the comics. I don't need Daredevil to fucking fight Galactus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But it's also like you never know what's going to work and what's not going to work. When in 2008, before Iron Man came out, I remember I was joking with my roommate at the time, and I said, well, they got to make what characters they still own, I guess. Because I was like, Iron Man to me is a second fiddle Marvel character.
Was your roommate Matt Fredrickson at the time?
No. It was
Because I had a
Robert
conversation
Chant.
with Matt Fredrickson that sounded a lot like what you're saying right now.
Maybe we might have had the same one, because if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, Iron Man's not
He ain't shit.
not an A-lister at all. And now it's hard to think of the Marvel universe without Iron Man at the fucking center.
Now in the comics, Iron Man is the most powerful human character in Marvel.
Yeah. And in the movies, the most powerful money-wise character, anything. Don't believe me? Go back and see the first Tom Holland Spider-Man movie poster.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, and that was the smart thing. And that was, I mean, you can go back to, you know, the argument was when this all started is, well, the Avengers are a Justice League ripoff. Really, you know what I mean?
Yep.
They're the budget Justice League.
But if you grew
All
up
those
in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and you're like, hey, I'm going to start a Marvel Cinematic Universe, who am I starting with? No motherfucker, not one says Iron Man, not one.
No.
They say X-Men, they say Fantastic Four, they
Honestly,
say Spider-Man.
Yeah, you don't
say
you don't
Captain
say
America.
one member of the Avengers.
Yeah,
But
it's
the problem
you
is that every answer that you give wasn't owned by Marvel.
Right.
exactly, and that was my joke. Was like, well, Iron Man's getting the first movie because that's what's left over.
You got that.
No, as I look forward to the Namor movie, is like I was cracking wise. Then I went and saw the first Iron Man, and I was like, well, I could watch 50 of those.
Right.
And we
When's
did.
that Namor movie coming out?
Whenever
Hey,
Sony lets
come on,
them do it.
Namor, get back here.
Come on, Keanu. Take that money.
Yeah.
Who is it going to be?
Uh,
It's the one dude, right? The dude that looks...
I forget who it's supposed to be. They talked about him, but it's
Oh,
also
really? They had a movie
Namor's
lined
also
up
one of
for
those
fucking
ones that
Namor?
do they have the right to use Namor?
He's kind of a universal...
Namor, yeah,
they have the
Namor's
right
still
to
owned
use
by
Namor
Universal.
in not a Namor movie the same as Hulk.
Okay.
That's how it
Yeah.
works.
Okay.
Okay, let's do this.
Yep.
Let's do our three favorites. Favorite parts of this episode.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Anybody? Go ahead.
I can.
Favorite
I can
can be
totally go
bad or
first if you
good
want.
because I understand in this episode it has to be tough, even though it's your favorite part.
I'm gonna spoil the entire episode if I go first. Pretty
No,
much.
we're not. We're
It's
spoiling.
spoiled. It's whatever.
We have abandoned our play-by-play of these episodes. We are just going to talk about what we want to talk about.
There's a lot
You
of
can
great
go
moments
watch
in this
Screen
episode.
Rant and heavy spoilers for your play-by-plays.
I'll walk out on my own play-by-play.
Yeah,
We're
we're here to drunkenly comment on this episode.
Honestly, and there's a lot of good moments in this episode, but my favorite moment is Steven falls off the boat of death, and then the scales go balance. And I was like, that's such a fuck you to us. That's such a fuck you to Steve, and it's the right fuck you. Because it's like you were investing in the lie,
Yes.
motherfucker.
Yes.
And
From episode
I
one, we
was-
talked about that in episode one. About how it's going to be very interesting if they start the whole first episode with only, like, we drip. This is the most Mark we get in this episode. We may go full opposite. Well, it seemingly is true that now from first episode to sixth episode, we go full Steven to no Steven, only Mark.
Yeah.
Maybe someone else. But you're right. I think that's a very interesting.
When he fell off the boat and turned into a Tusken Raider, and then fucking the scales balanced. I was sitting alone, like watching it, writing my dumb notes for this, and I was just like, I think I typed well shit. Like,
It's also a fuck you to the comic books too, because
and it's not. They are not wrong in doing that at all.
No,
he has created a false character to deal with his grief. Not until that dies can Mark accept that's not real. What's real is what happened to you, and you're not facing it, and so you're not dealing with it. And
and once you have no need for that guy. And they gave him a moment to shine at the end, which was nice.
Yep.
I really did love that moment where he was like, you got this. Wait, if you got this, I got this. Like, like that moment where it was such, I think, an important moment to give to him before he died. To be like, we are not different people. We are the same people. We're a fucked up person. Like, everything that I am, he is. Everything that he is, I am. And now we need to work together. I thought that was a beautiful moment at that point.
Yeah, there was, and you know, there was that. There was definitely the revelation of the parents and how they both play. And so that was definitely my second favorite moment. I really didn't care for the dead brother thing. It's been done too much, with Stephen King's It and just everything else. Whenever we get, all I think of is The Good Son. Like every time we get to like two little kids and one kills the other one, it's not.
But a lesser show would have spent episodes showing that brother, right?
Yeah.
They showed him for 2 scenes.
Yeah,
they were
10
like,
minutes. This is
3
This is the
scenes.
second shortest episode, and more happens in this episode.
Yeah.
Than all the other episodes,
Well,
which is always
basically it's one continuous scene because you see the kid, he runs off, Steven runs after him, goes immediately into the next mind room where the kid is,
Right.
and then they go to the woods. So he's basically just following the entire time. So it's kind of just one scene that the younger brother is shown.
Yeah, he's like, oh, you're a dude with dead people? And even that little subtle thing where they showed all the people that he killed, and then his brother shows up. It shows, I remember killing these people, but I still blame myself also for killing my brother. Even though I didn't shoot them in the head or beat them to death as Moon Knight or whatever I did, which I've definitely done.
Yeah.
Like, the complication that they put on this character, like this is things that they would tease on, some NBC show that isn't about superheroes, but goes 23 episodes a season over several seasons, and they only give you little snippets of these things. Like, we're holding this up to a standard with these other shows, but really, like, some of the things that they've achieved over this 5-episode series, I think, though I don't give as much a shit about who Moon Knight when I walk into this show, they've probably done more with this than any of the other characters.
Yeah, it's hard to say because like each episode's been about an hour, and there is a bar that's been raised at Marvel, I think, with Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, because these characters
Everybody
suck.
drink. If you don't know the drinking game, have a drink right
Yeah,
now.
let's everybody take a drink. James just mentioned it. Again, I've said this 50,000 times, and I'll say it 50,000 more times. Guardians of the Galaxy as characters and a comic suck. I know about the 2008, get out of my face, but they still suck. And to do that well with them, that by the end of what would essentially be hour 4 of if they had a TV show and it was just the 2 movies were divided up, by the middle of the second movie, I want the Guardians of the Galaxy to win every time, and that is, and for me as a comic book geek, I hate the Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm the guy in the audience giggling every time Yondu comes on because I'm like, you guys have no idea what you missed out
Well,
on.
most of us don't come to most of us in this room didn't come to Guardians of the Galaxy with a Star-Lord or a Gamora or any of those people in, again, Yondu, who's not even in the Guardians of the Galaxy, technically,
Yeah.
he's the dad
Well,
of a guy in a Guardians of the Galaxy. He's not in it, So
Yeah, the Yondu we knew was a space Native American with a magic bow and arrow, which is about, I believe,
Can we just say that one more time? A space
Native American? Isn't that what?
A space Native American.
With a magic bow and arrow.
Yes.
So when James Gunn turned
And
him
a
into a
giant
hillbilly,
mohawk.
yeah,
It's purple.
when James Gunn turned him into a hillbilly, it was the most amazing sidestep in racist history. Like I have never seen it be like, oh, hey, we have this Superman's best friend, the Klan member. And then somebody was like, well, I think I'm going to reshape that character where he's just really into cones.
Right.
So, yeah, it's the most amazing sidestep in racist comic writing history. And there's a lot, folks. There's a lot.
There's a lot.
But, yeah, so... after I will say that,
Like, did you know that Superman fought the Japanese?
Sure. Of course we did.
Like,
let's just get back to Moon Knight. How about that? Like, there's a can of worms called the long racist history of comics.
yes.
And when we get into it,
so
it ends with, well, Bizarro would have Bizarro semen, so that wouldn't even work. Like that would be, that's always the end of the argument.
Bizarro. So 3A.
3A.
I enjoyed
He's trying to pretend he's Canadian. So
all
it
of
doesn't
the
apply to him.
all of the scenes inside of Harrow's office.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because Ethan Hawke's character in that, while you're like distrusting in episode 4, you're distrusting him the entire time, and in this episode you realize, no, this character is right, and he's actually trying to help Mark.
Yeah.
That's where I had the flip. Okay, so I had a very interesting thing. I agree with you. Ethan Hawke, I think, especially throughout this asylum part, but throughout this whole series, I think both he has not given a throwaway line, nor has he thrown away any line. No. Okay? Like, he's killing it as good as Oscar Isaac, even though Oscar Isaac's given a lot more in this. But in that moment, like, I had a realization where it's like, we're presented that Ethan Hawke has been the bad guy the whole time, right? Yeah. And maybe in the world we're presented in the beginning, he is, okay? I kind of think as a Marvel show, that's where we will land on this. That's happening. He needs to stop that, okay? Reasons, we'll see what happens. But in his mind right now, that's not Arthur Harrow. No. That is his mind creating a both villain, but also a doctor in a way. Because I think he both puts him on these paths that he has to walk across as the bad guy, but at the same time, every time he comes back, he's got some shit to say that's valuable to the character we're being presented, at least in these last 2 episodes.
The Dr. character of Harrow, if he was a pure construct of Mark's head, would be what you see in the rest of the show. This evil villain conniving and everything like that. But even if Harrow as a doctor is in his head as being his antagonist, as some patients think their psychiatrists are their antagonists,
yeah,
he's never actually presented as that.
No.
He's never
but-
shown to be trying to trick Mark or trying to be disingenuous with him in any way, shape, or form. He is truly trying to help Mark get through everything.
I take that a little bit, but he still has attacked Mark. He is still not physically himself, which still leads to the potential of being him as a doctor directing an orderly to do something. But all right,
Yeah, I
sorry,
think we're
we
back.
are back. We're back. We're talking about our favorite things about Moon Knight episode 5. On working on the moon, working on the night moons.
What you missed during that time was me admitting that I don't care for my mom.
In case you missed it,
And this episode really, really hit me with that.
Right.
And
Real
and
quick, why don't
I'm
we just
saying
do a
I
show
love
of
my
hands?
imperfect mom, and I
Well,
love my.
could we just do a show of hands? Who in this group would, by today's standards, grew up with an abusive parent?
I wouldn't say that I grew up with an abusive parent.
high five.
I would say I grew up with very young parents who I will give some leeway to, that I don't think
Always.
made all the best decisions in their young age, but my parents were 18 and 19 when they had me.
Yeah.
All right.
Mine were like 21, 23, but
Yeah.
most of the bad decisions came when I was older. So I don't get
Fair
that
enough.
leeway.
Fair enough.
Most of us are here because of our inability of our fathers to pull out. So,
Hey.
so long as
Fair
we
enough.
understand that, and know that.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Yep.
If Ethan Hawke wants to come on the final episode of this show and give us some Ned Flanders wisdom, please. We'll
You know, I
we'll
saw a
reach
great
out
interview.
somehow.
Why-
Jesse's on vacation when he comes back. See if he can reach out.
Yeah, this episode is dedicated to Jesse because we can't get shit to work.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
Jesse,
Last
if
two.
you ever felt like,
God
man,
damn it.
I'm not respected or cared about, we could not respect or care about you more. We don't have it. We apparently
Now we're gonna
won't be
tear
on.
down that wall. It's
Yeah.
a callback to the previous
Yeah.
episode. You gotta watch
We
that.
have a wall in the studio now. We're deflecting
No,
we're deflecting off Moon Knight and our feelings.
But you also said
I-
that your third favorite thing
Is the
was
Oscar Isaac performance in
Oscar
this entire
Isaac.
episode is just amazing.
Yeah.
It's definitely the best thing I've seen him do.
What was funny is I saw an interview with Ethan Hawke about why he did the show. Was Oscar Isaac kept calling him to be in it. Oscar Isaac was like, "You got to play this role. You're going to be amazing in it." And he's like, I don't know Disney, and you know me. I want to do Before the Night Rise Sunset.
Right.
Leave me alone. And I'm going to do Gattaca
I
too.
want to do a King
And,
Arthur movie, man.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and then
Northman
Ethan
out
Hawke
right
found
now.
out that
Or
the
what?
director
Wait,
of half the episodes was a director he was trying to work with on 2 different movies. He was like, "Oh shit, you got so and blah 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 blah." Fill in later.
Mohammed Diem.
And he is like, "I've been trying to do movies with that guy. Like, I think that guy's super talented." So Ethan Hawke was like, one, an actor I liked kept bugging me to be in it, and then the guy directing the episodes was a guy I wanted to be directed by. So
Right.
he was like,
Ethan
after I
Hawke's
heard
one
that,
of those actors that made a turn at a certain point in his career, and even though you may not love everything that happened from that point on, like you can see he was making like acting choices of things that he wanted to work on.
really,
you know
what,
what I mean?
what do we all know Ethan Hawke for before this? Like, he is a famous
Gattaca was, I think, that turning point, honestly, for him. Because and that makes sense for him going into this now, because I think he's always kind of had that interest in the, sci-fi, whatever kind of things, but more that high-minded shit, because Gattaca, as goofy as some of that stuff was, that was high-minded sci-fi,
It's very for me.
and then
I love Gattaca.
Training
Yeah.
Day again,
Yeah.
that was a real, I think, great choice for him as an actor. And I think that this is another one of those great choices for him.
Gattaca always reminded me, like, I liked it because it was like 1970s or 60s sci-fi, where it was like, hey, we're gonna make a sci-fi movie. And, you know, sci-fi always has action. We're
Right.
taking all that shit out.
Yeah, the
Just gonna
60s.
sit-
Yeah, the 60s and 70s shit was like everybody wants to go to space. You want to go to
Yeah.
space? You're a hero. You want to go to space? This is where
Yeah.
we get. What's the DC guy? The Atom.
The Atom.
No, not the Atom. What's shit? What's the dude that does the Zeta beams to whatever? Atom something, isn't it? Anyways, but that kind of thing
That's
where
DC.
God damn it.
It just
I'm gonna look it up as you continue to talk. It's not for
after Star Wars, science fiction had to have a certain level of action. And
Yeah,
Gattaca's a great movie because it was like the biggest action point of the movie is them finding an eyelash.
Yeah.
Like that's the highest tension,
Yeah.
like most action in the movie is like they found some hair. They found an eyelash. I was like, I love this movie for forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at a lot of the Philip K. Dick adaptations of his books. His books, not heavy on action. The movies, we're putting action scenes in because that's what we do.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that they were playing with, like, a lot of those people that write those things. They are what you would call a Tony Stark in the comics, a futurist. They're people who see the trend. In the comic books, they put a lot of action shit in too. But in reality, most of the huge things that happen are rather boring. Like it's just a smart guy thought of this thing and we did it. It's not a catastrophe that we had to create some, you know, alpha human to be able to handle for some reason, which is comic books, which is most action movies. Adam Strange, by the way, is the DC comic character that I was talking about. But that's the same kind of thing where it's like he didn't have powers. He was a smart guy that created a way to basically warp to this other world that was having these problems, and his mind with his technology and giving him a rocket pack and a laser gun. Like
As you did in the 50s and 60s.
Again, yeah, like, you know, talking about those kind of simplified things. And I think you're right. Arthur Harrow, that's kind of, or Gattaca rather, is kind of that similar thing.
Yeah.
We had a lot of that in the 60s and 70s where it's like sci-fi became hot really because of Star Trek and then and a couple other shows. Really, our space race is what, you know, us going to the moon and fighting with those evil Russians who, spoiler alert, they're back.
Boom.
Is like I love the Russians because
all right.
I mean, speaking.
what is like the Russians never give us an endless flow of villains. Like you know, if you ever were looking, I wrote a play that was about rewriting the end of Dracula, and when I was researching Dracula, I was reading Bram Stoker's stuff and a bunch of stuff at the time, and assholes from the East is like magical shitheads from the East is a thing. It's like not a James thing. This is a thing. Like Dracula is a magical asshole from the East, and it's like if you're in the UK or France or anything like that, a magical asshole from the East
China.
shows up and is going to take your women. So yeah, it's nice to know they're still doing their part for at least storytelling. Not for humanity. I think I think the Ukrainian people would like their
See, if
homes
they would have just waited for that Red Dawn remake, they only needed to wait like 4 more years for that Red Dawn remake. They wouldn't have had to made it Chinese or Koreans. Was it? What was it?
It was in the second one, Koreans, I think.
Was it Koreans or I think it was
fuck.
Chinese.
But Chinese is topical because China's watching this whole thing, going like, "You guys don't like this."
Well, once we put it
yeah.
on TikTok,
Yeah.
It's probably
We'll
gonna
have
get
all our
pulled.
info.
This part's gonna get blacked
So-
out for some reason.
So yeah,
Everything else will work fine.
so if,
This will get blacked.
so if you missed the first broadcast where we're actually talking about Moon Knight, welcome
No.
to This Isn't Really
Welcome.
Moon Knight.
Welcome to Working on the Night Moon.
No.
My favorite three things. Again, I think that moment where I realized that this Arthur Harrow, at least what I believe is this is in Mark's mind. Okay. Also, the second goes right with the first is I love that they really gave us that Mark is the guy. Like
Yeah.
Mark, like you have Mark talking to his parents. His parents are calling him Mark in everything. They never say Stephen.
Yeah.
His wife never says Stephen until that moment when she had to make him put on that suit, which I also think was beautiful. Okay. Especially in hindsight. And man, like same thing you said, James, is that moment where he balanced because Stephen ceased.
It broke
to
my heart.
exist.
I'm not gonna lie. Disney Plus broke my heart. Like as soon as Steven fell off and the balance went, I just like took a moment. I just like was like, this was already draining. This was already draining. I'm dealing with my own personal stuff right now. My abusive parent is dying of prostate cancer right now. So it's like I'm dealing with that. And so like me just sitting there watching a comic book character deal with it, which because of years of growing up like dyslexic, I related more to comic books than to regular literature because I was able to understand it and follow along. Just watching this kind of happen and fold out was I can easily say for like 2/3, if not 3/3 of this group, definitely like watched this episode and was like, well, I need a cigarette and a shower.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's a bit much, and but a bit much in the best way, where it's
Yeah.
like this is
You need
this
that
feels
stuff in your
real.
life.
this
Sometimes you
feels
need to be
real because
confronted
so
with
many
that
of
stuff.
us can back this sort of thing up.
Yeah.
And then when Steven falls off and balance happens, it's like in normal storytelling and normal fairy tale storytelling, Steven's the good guy. And he's going to show Mark that he's wrong.
Right.
And he is going to, they're not going to kill anymore. And they're going to be good humans to society.
And he's gonna
Steven's
overtake him.
Steven's a fucking lie. Steven's a joke we created to deal with our insecurities and our hardships from the drama that's been put on us.
Mhm.
And he's got to fucking die for us to move on. And it's very real. It's very depressing. It's very shitty. And most of the time, it's not good storytelling because it's really hard to create an arc with that. And when he fell off the boat, yeah, I think I just like walked outside and had a
I think-
cigarette where I was just like, it's done.
I have
It's
to
done.
say though that ties in. My third ties into that moment before he fell off the boat too, because I think that again they've told me so many backwards storytelling elements that I am not quite familiar with, at least on the most part, that I feel like that they're going to bring that back. They're going to bring back that, Mark, you got rid of Stephen, but you're still not just Mark. Like
Yeah.
you are all these things. Even though you spent your time as this other person, like that's still there somehow. It might not be a total flip, but it might be something that you access, and they might do stupid shit where they make his eyes flitter to get into Steven. You know, hopefully not. But I think that is still a valuable thing to show. That even though you switch to this other person, it's still within this brain that belongs to
Well,
both.
it is reconciliation for his mind. That,
And a lot of this pulls from like, Fight Club probably did the two mindsets living in one body better than most modern cinema or stories. And they sum it up perfectly, which is Tyler Durden says, "I didn't create a false accountant to deal with my insecurities," which is like just a quick one line in Fight Club, but it makes all the difference. That line is like, yeah, you created Tyler Durden because you can't deal with your fucking problems. Steven
great thing
exists
going
because
to
Mark can't deal with his.
Your point is when Oscar Isaac does that turn as Mark, which we've seen in the trailers, where he freaks out and he starts hitting himself on the face. Like, I was like, holy shit. You know what I mean? Like that, even I had forgotten about that from the trailers by the time it happened, but I thought about it when it happened, but it didn't discount that at all. Like, I was like, oh shit. Okay, yeah, this guy does not, like, he's created, no matter how tough we think Mark is, he's the person who created these things to protect himself. Long before he was Khonshu's shit. You know what I mean? Like, as tough as he is, he still has a very significant weakness. And we've seen that, and we've been served that outside of the Khonshu thing, which we should probably talk about the Khonshu thing, which none of us have. But there is a Khonshu thing.
It's the least interesting part of the story.
Hey, Moon Knight showed up in this
point.
episode, by the way. This series called Moon Knight. Moon Knight showed up. So it's that scene was interesting because it brought back what happened in episode 2 with Harrow saying to Steven, did Khonshu choose you because you were already broken, or did he break you after choosing you? And now we come to find out, nope, Khonshu chose him because he was broken, and he took full advantage of him.
Yeah.
And Steven, like, verbally says it out loud to Mark in that room while
They
they're watching
still
it.
keep it to both, because how many people are limping up half dead to his, to his altar? Not many,
But he didn't.
but at the same
he didn't go to
time,
his
like, if just anybody would have, he may have just been like, fuck you, and I'll wait another 100 years.
Oscar Isaac didn't go to his altar to pray for forgiveness or for his power. He went there to blow his fucking brains out all over his dirty ass statue. So it was a fucking bird god that was deciding, hey, I can use this asshole to fucking, because I can't keep an avatar because I'm a piece of shit. I'm going to lock in this avatar.
Because he also says, at this time, Khonshu says, you will be my avatar for this time, or whatever.
And I'm going to get crazy conspiracy theories. Just go ahead and we can do the meme of Charlie Day with the lines later. With the little draw. Yeah. His wife is an avatar for another god.
Okay.
His wife, that's why she's showing up as the hippo.
Let's do two things. So you have to start first because you've said this. We're going to go through. We're going to say our rating and then our predictions. You've already said your prediction.
We got one episode left.
One episode left.
Oh, we didn't put that.
James, wait.
We have no moons.
No, I don't have the moons. Listen, I'm not Jesse. Jesse's gone in Oregon. I don't know.
I think this is going to be a consensus across the board.
Okay. I think so too. James, what is your moon rating? Full moon, no moon being the first and last, whatever.
This is an odd rating for me because I'm going to give it a very high rating, but it is missing an element that I want for my high ratings.
Whatever. Doesn't matter. We have nothing to push. It can be whatever you want. Yeah. It's fine.
No. It's going to be something. I'm annoyed that it is something because this episode is lacking in something that is if I give something 5 stars, I really want it to be very well done, very well told, and to get me excited for the next one.
Okay.
This one,
you're gonna take a half point off because the last thing. The show's
No,
over,
I'm
folks.
going
He's
to give
dead.
I'm giving this a 5 out of 5, same as I
Okay.
did for the Loki, same as I did for one of the episodes of what I've only given 5 out of 5 like 3 times.
Yeah.
And I'm giving it for this one, even though it does not get me. There should be something that gets me really mentally excited for the next episode. That didn't happen. However, I am, I guess, emotionally excited for the next episode. Like, we're literally watching a character realize that what they think is their positive traits are actually negative traits. So,
All right.
the last episode, like the next episode could be 2 stars if they fuck this up. But it's like right now, I'm saying it's 5, whatever our 5 out of 5
Full moon.
moons is.
Full moon.
Full moon.
Full moon.
This is
Werewolf
this is fucking turn
do
into
that.
a werewolf
No,
right
you
here,
have to
baby.
do that. You have to sing it. Just that one line.
So
Do it,
yeah,
James.
yeah,
Go.
exactly.
James.
5 moons
James.
of London.
Yeah.
Do we do that?
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
there you go. I get a drink.
There you go.
My wife's comment while James was talking that yes, our kid has a shirt with the moon phases on it that glows in the dark. She says I could have brought that and just pointed on there. Here's what the rating.
All you gotta
There
do
you
is
go.
take the picture and make the fucking thing.
That's
man.
fine.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a 5 out of 5 full moons of London for me. This was the culmination of the previous 4 episodes.
Yes.
Except for the stuff where the supernatural god stuff happening. But you know what? I didn't care about that. I cared about this episode. I cared about everything that happened in this episode. I enjoyed the storytelling they did with this episode. I enjoyed the acting. I just, everything about it was about as perfect as it could have been. WandaVision episode 8, the episode where it shows why she has her grief and what she did with it, was a very good episode. This was better than that in terms of how Mark's grief was and where he came from. It hurt to watch this episode.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
and it hurt to go back and watch this episode and to watch other people talk about this episode. It just didn't stop hurting the entire day because certain things in it really affected me because of my own life. And it's just well done.
Yep.
What's the Alan Moore line? Artists use lies to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And we got a great big spoonful of that shit from this.
Definitely.
Yeah, it really reminded me of Loki. I think episode 4 or 5,
Episode 4.
when they meet God and they cut his head off, and then the Loki we know from our timeline gets killed.
Yep.
I honestly
And I
think
was
that's an
never-
interesting conversation to have at some point on this show, is kind of our general opinion of how all of these television shows work into the general Marvel universe, because I think there's a lot of these things that they're doing. There's a potential for a big payoff to the people who've been paying attention, even though maybe they don't totally play that for the movie universe.
Well,
But
I mean, the timing has to be perfect because right after the next episode of this, Multiverse of Madness comes out, and that's what our next show is about. So we can easily include in this because
not next.
no. I'm saying after the next show of Moon
After
Knight,
Moon Knight,
is
yeah.
is when that. So therefore, that show right after is our show about that movie, which even from the first trailer, it proves that at least WandaVision exists in the MCU completely and is now in the movie unit. Is it?
Well, I think all of this does, but this show in particularly has nothing to do with the Marvel universe. There is zero. It's only
there's-
comic book references. What do they Okay.
There's references, but there's
Two
nothing.
places.
There's nothing
No
directly.
timeline.
No, there's nothing directly stating.
Yes. The only thing that I can really think of is the reference to Falcon Winter Soldier's
The RCP or
and whatever. What's the place called?
the group that relocates. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, no, that's one. The second one being this episode, the ancestral plane.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. We'll get it. The ancestral plane, which is a reference to Black Panther.
Yeah. Being one of the many afterlife possibilities of.
I will give this, because we don't have any way to put it, a 4.9. This is the day before the full moon. Only because I agree with what James Kopp says. Like, I want to give this a 5. And maybe I unfairly, earlier in this series, gave something a 5 that I still feel like this is better than.
Yeah.
But it still feels the same way that James says. It's missing one thing that I cannot quite put my finger on, but I agree it's missing one thing. And I think that before you go into that, I think that I know there's one more episode.
Yep.
And I know Marvel, and I know Marvel owned by Disney, and I know that, again, like we said early in this video, a big purple sky with people who are mostly CGI are going to do some stuff. And at the beginning and the end of this episode, they're going to further, hopefully, some of these very interesting existential ideals that they've presented throughout this episode. Same in WandaVision, same in Falcon Winter Soldier, same in so many of these shows that they have still kind of suffered the opposite effect of what Netflix shows did. The Netflix Marvel shows could have been 2 episodes shorter, almost all of them, some 2 to 4. These, a lot of them, I think, can be 8 episodes. I think 8 episodes, I think if I'm going to do mathematician shit, 8 episodes is where you get that kind of sweet spot. I think that some of these Marvel shows have suffered from knowing you need to get to that Marvel ending, but not spending enough time in that area that you need to be to make this character unique and interesting. So I'll give it a 4.9.
Okay.
That's good. Totally good. And like I said, I'm giving it a 5.5, even though it doesn't meet my 5.5 rating. But even though it doesn't meet my cookie cutter concept of what would be a great episode, this was a 5 out of 5 for Moon Knight. Like, it's like,
Fair
and I didn't expect to have such a emotional reaction with this episode or with this character. So this
How many
was,
times did tears come in your eye?
Well,
It's easier to answer how many times they didn't.
A guy named Tears came up and came in your eye. What time?
yeah,
How many
it
times?
came in my eye. Mr. Tears. Oh, that slut. I'll just say once, and it honestly, the once was Stephen dying, because modern storytelling, the way Americans like to tell their stories, the innocent does not suffer. Scooby-Doo will always live. The innocent character will always exist.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this show, subconsciously, if you acknowledge it or not, the innocent character was just fucking thrown away.
Right.
Fucking aborted right in front of our eyes. Sorry, Florida. Sorry, Texas. I know it's Disney Plus. I know you guys are all nervous
fine.
about it. Yeah. So that was really like something I didn't expect to see, I guess, where it was like, this is the reason why the Loki episode that I gave a 5.5, and I would argue WandaVision is a couple episodes too long.
Extra. He's doing 5.5.
At least they should have spent more time really developing how do we deal with the very real questions we're talking about in different sitcoms. And I don't think they did in the first 2 episodes. With Loki, Loki meets a version of himself that's better than him. And then he meets God
Right.
and cuts his fucking head off and was willing to sacrifice himself and let him die to save the better version. I didn't realize Loki was capable of that. I didn't realize that Marvel and Disney Plus storytelling was capable of talking about those things. I didn't realize that I would, at that end of the episode, go, holy shit, where do we go from here? If we've already cut God's head off,
And again,
I don't even know storytelling wise where we go from here.
We're at that
3 series later, we're in this conversation that we're having right now. Like,
Where
I
does
can't
Mark
not be
go
super
from here?
excited for Marvel and the stories they're willing to tell. Like, come on, let's talk about always shit on everything. Like, there's no other thing that's happening like this.
No.
There's just not. There's not another coherent storyline that is telling this varied of stories that has ever happened throughout our time.
We shit on things, but
maybe
they earned it.
pre-Disney, you know. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I talk to every now and again. I'll be talking to like young writers. They're like, "How can I succeed to be a writer?" And the joke I always crack is, "Be shitty," because if Chuck Lorre is going to be the highest paid writer in Hollywood, the creator of 2.5 Men and Big Bang Theory and 8 million other fucking horrible abortion shows, it's like if that's going to be the top of pay, the only way for you really to succeed is to find mediocrity and thrive in it. It is not to talk about real things. It's not to talk. It's to turn everybody into dumb comic book cartoon characters of themselves.
That is a testament to this show right here, working on the night moons every Wednesday night. Yes.
It is literally about a comic book character, and they're talking more about real stuff than we've ever seen, that I can even point to in the last year. So,
Definitely.
yeah, it's only got 1 episode left, which is nuts, which is crazy talk, because where do you go from here?
like and compared to the other episodes, like Hawkeye, when we talked about episode 5, so how are they going to wrap this up? This is that times however many more. It's like, okay, well, he's dead now, like dead. Where do you go and how do you do anything at this point?
So
It's not just that the show killed him.
Yeah.
They killed our lead character, and then our real character is allowed to go to heaven.
Yeah.
I
kill
think
him.
this series is honestly so much more genuine and well, in better for me if Layla breaks out Khonshu and becomes Moon Knight. That is the better thing. Okay, that is Mark has whatever and Steven was never anything and he just ceases to exist anymore because guess what? People die every day as good or as bad as they are. Okay?
Yeah.
As good or as bad as they are. Period. That's it. Okay? Maybe he goes to the fields of whatever and who gives a shit? Give him a great ending. Give him and Steven, they go and they broke back mountain in the fucking mountains on the fields or whatever. Great. I love it. But give it something that furthers a storyline. I think that the most interesting thing that Marvel has going right now is they have something going in the movie theaters that we've only ever imagined in the television universe. And they have it on scale, whether it's on TV or streaming or whatever it is, to where, how much do they spend on this series? I guarantee they spent as much as they spent on Ant-Man.
Disney Plus is actually marked for being the most expensive series to date.
Yes.
Like Mandalorian, I think Mandalorian season 1 and one of their other shows.
Until
was like
Amazon
the-
comes out with their Lord of the Rings thing, yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
That Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings is going to set a bar.
And Mandalorian's had a lot of money spent on it, with them looking for the cheapest way to do the special effects.
Yeah. And then they created that, and now Disney uses all that shit.
Yeah.
And it costs way less. But
Yeah, I saw a breakdown where it was like, oh, the most expensive TV shows of all time, and for the longest time was Sopranos Sopranos and another show
And then
from
Game of Thrones.
HBO, where it was because cast cost and they were shooting it on 35 millimeter and everything, and they actually said the most expensive show to date so far was it was a Disney Plus. I want to say it was Mandalorian season 1, where they were like so much each episode of that. And Loki, I think, was up there. Each episode of that was like 20 million an episode. As where Sopranos, it was like $15 million an episode.
it was
and then the
Mandalorian
next one
season 1 because they rolled in that fucking technologies.
Yeah.
Uh,
It was mostly
cost.
spent on building that, and then once that gets going, then it's like
Because this is
it's
what this. That's why you can't even get into cost in this day and age, because there's new technology coming out all the time. They roll that into whatever tax bullshit that they're going to write off that year, and great. They don't have to make money off the Mandalorian
Yep.
because you cannot directly quantify how many people ever subscribed to Disney Plus to watch The Mandalorian. So they don't
They
have
tried.
to ever do that. It's only
They
year by
tried.
year, what am I writing off on my taxes?
Yeah.
That's all it ever is. So your fucking cost doesn't mean anything. Amazon bought Lord of the Rings. This Lord of the Rings thing is going to be by far the most expensive thing ever done on television. But it doesn't matter because they own the fucking Lord of the Rings. They're going to do 8,000 Lord of the Rings Tolkien shows forever. And it's all have already been written off by this whatever show they're doing. And it can last 2 years, and who cares? And they do a loss, and then they get all this money back. I mean, yay. We're not doing a politics show here, so, you know, we don't need to move on to that. But that's how these things work. This show looked beautiful, though. I think that even though a lot of it was dark, like even the sand zombies and the zombies that, like, there was a lot of zombies in this, but it still looked as good as any zombie shit. What won the Oscar, like, best, hey, I love this, I'm voting online movie, was Zack Snyder's
Oh God.
zombie movie last year,
The
right?
Netflix one.
Right?
Which
Yeah,
is
Like that
really
one,
tough.
right?
Yeah,
At the
that one.
Oscars, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Looked as good
not
as
only
all
does
of
that movie suck,
I don't
it is
either.
stupid.
I don't think
um,
that movie sucked.
Well, it's watch Train to Busan 1 and 2, because Train to Busan 2, which came out 3 years before that, is the exact same point for point plot.
Didn't
as
say it
Zack
was the
Snyder.
best version of
Okay,
zombies.
yeah, I got you.
Didn't suck.
My favorite things from that the Zack Snyder zombie, I'm a zombie nut for those who don't know, was shit they didn't explore. Like, I love that there was a pile of dead zombies, and when they were so dehydrated from the desert, when it rained, they became alive again. And I was like, what does that mean? What are you saying with that? That's such a fascinating concept. And it's like, we're not going to focus on that. Let's get back to slot machines and a zombie dressed up like Elvis. And it was like, Jesus, like, nothing could be more Zack Snyder than that, where it's like you suggested a very smart, interesting idea, and you didn't focus on it. You went with the comical or easy way around it almost. Like, it's, yeah.
Well, that may be the interesting conversation to have right now is do you have a person who can create, because arguably that movie does not need to go deep into that based on what, again, it was okay. Could it have been better? Yeah, maybe, but not simply on any of those single things we've talked about. Like you
Well,
would have
Zack
had
Snyder
to
did-
elaborate hardcore into that, way deeper into just that ideal. But maybe we need a Zack Snyder in DC universe.
Zack Snyder
to
did
give us
direct,
the overarching thing, and we
Yeah.
need some minions to get into, the thick of whatever that is.
Just put
No,
Zack
no, no.
Snyder's face out there and have somebody else write it.
Yeah, we talk about this. We've talked about this on Canoodle Studios a couple of times, and I can't stress this enough. All art for profit falls into two groups: substance and spectacle. The best art for profit is a mixture of substance and spectacle, which is there's something for your audience to take away from it, and you're showing us crazy shit that we've never seen before or get excited about.
Which is something as a comic book fan you should definitely respect, because that's all they've ever given you either.
Absolutely. And for right or wrong, 80s cinema and late 70s cinema, George Lucas needs to be nailed to the cross for this, for a lot of things, is the idea of spectacle and substance can exist at the same time. And Star Wars, as simplistic as it is, has deep substance. It really does. It's simple. It's simple as a motherfucker, so much that you're like, that's not deep at all. It still is, but the spectacle in it was so great that we were willing to let it cross over. And you get this back and forth. Star Trek obviously was a lot of substance, a little bit of spectacle, but your art that survives in the last 40 years, very much so, has to be a mixture of the two.
Right.
And I would argue that my favorite movies and TV shows and everything are a mixture of the two. And we got that with the Moon Knight episode, where it was like, it very much is talking about childhood trauma. How do we deal with it? How do we healthily deal with it? And how do we not? And how is it like toxic to deal with it?
Right.
And the toxic way to deal with it is to create a completely different persona and act like it didn't happen.
I don't know that that's the toxic part of it. I think the toxic part of it is that Mark refusing to allow anything else or anyone else to help.
I think that's the toxic part of it.
That's the toxic part of your life.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think there's an interesting thing that they did at the end of this episode, which is he allowed Steven to help, and then Steven fucking died. Okay? The second he gave a shit about Steven and let him help, he died. Which is always it's a kick it down the line storyline, but
I would argue he gave a shit about Steven the whole time, and the way he was giving a shit about Steven is a plot devicey way. Once again, substance and spectacle. He was trying to make him not see the truth.
Yeah.
Because if Steven saw the truth, he would realize that he is pointless.
Which came
in
up.
what this grand
Yeah.
scheme of things
It
is.
came up. It was the audience point of view statement by Steven at one point was, I thought I was the main, and I find out that I'm just
no, you're not. No, you're not.
this creation by you.
You're the byproduct of
Matt's
trauma,
wife Miranda
motherfucker.
said, "This episode brought to you by Kettle One.
Yep, myself.
Kettle One,
Ah,
the best way
yeah,
to
brought-
get
brought to you
your
by therapy.
opinion on Moon
The
Knight."
best way to talk about your parental abuse. Kettle. Predictions?
Matt, prediction.
Predictions.
We've already got
So
James's prediction. James's prediction that he would like to have is that they realize
going- if you're
almost
going
no
to
humans
say-
will exist
Yeah.
because of the decision. At least.
Yeah,
Right?
It's Ethan Hawke's plan does not work at a fundamental level as far as writing goes. If everybody who ever was born into
They
original
do the same
sin
thing
and
from
is-
What If. They make Thanos Black Panther talks to Thanos, and he realizes he should just make double
Yeah.
instead
Now,
of
if
cut
we're gonna
everyone
do amazing
Half.
superheroes, the what if Black Panther, who just talks to people and everything is fixed, he has the most amazing superpower ever, which is obviously mind control.
out. This is where that idea works.
Yeah.
So
What do you
No.
feel?
So here's an interesting thing I've seen, and I kind of agree with it. At the beginning of the episode, when we cut to Harrow's office, and his face is all fucked up, there's a thought that that's not actually Mark, that is Jake,
The third person
the third person, because
that we have not seen yet.
we have not seen
And
yet.
for those of us who quit reading Moon Knight comics when they were like 11 because this character sucks, and this is
Or
a very
honestly,
good.
only saw Moon Knight in. Hey, Moon Knight's in this comic.
The
They had
Yeah,
Spider-Man
totally.
in it.
Like, is it good for him? Good for him. It's my
That's me.
attitude.
That's me.
Because what they've set up for so far is that Jake seems to be the more aggressive person, more aggressive than Mark because, well, he fucking killed 2 people with a knife or whatever he killed the first one with, and then the second one with a knife, out on top of that cliff. And here he is, this character who immediately goes to grab a weapon to go to attack. Yet every time we've seen, like the first time we saw Mark in Harrow's office, he wasn't interested in trying to attack him. He was trying to get away. This character didn't, even though he stated he's going to leave now, never actually made a concentrated effort to leave. He picked up that danger item on the table that should never be there if you're in a psychiatric hospital to begin with. But hey, it was there. Picked it
Well,
up.
let's put a really sharp pyramid on our
It's in his
glass
head.
table that I'm gonna
He'd
sit
be
on.
perfectly fine. Nobody's going to do anything
It's
with
in
it.
his head. Knock it off. Like we have not left
So-
fucking Mark's
Hey man,
mind.
you're tripping about Egyptian shit? I have Egyptian shit all over the place.
Yeah.
Why?
That's the only
Yeah.
loose thing that they haven't
I
done.
couldn't go meet you in your room
Where they bring
where there's not Egyptian shit that you're freaking out about.
Yeah.
where they bring it up in episode 4 that maybe there's possibly a third person. Episode 3, there's possibly a third person. Episode 4, hey, this sarcophagus and this other room shaking just like yours was, Steven. But we're going to ignore that right now. I think they have to come back to that. However,
Definitely. It has not been answered.
no, I think they have to come back to that. For what's been shown in any trailer and everything like that, there is Moon Knight fighting in episode 6. There will be. And Harrow and Moon Knight are
I
going...
sure hope so.
Harrow and Moon Knight are going to fight out in the desert or on the side of a pyramid or something. And I have a feeling that we may get the "this is still in your head" type thing. And this is a resolution to all of it. And he may actually truly be dead by the end of it.
Okay.
So, and now whether or not that means the Egyptian gods are real going forward or not, I don't know. I do want to say one thing real quickly before you say.
Go ahead.
Because it wasn't brought up in the last episode for us, but something to point out. The office that Harrow's in is a reset decoration from the area that Steven and Layla go to when they're getting away from Harrow in episode 2. That locked room, it is literally that set. Every part of it just rearranged for Harrow's office and made white.
Honestly, the last episode, I think we can go back probably to the last episode. There are a million things that are alluded to because every person that they introduce you to, which we don't really go back to in this episode, but every person introduced in that episode has been someone else in the previous episodes.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to find in that. I want to say that in the future, I just have this thing that Layla is going to be the next. I think this is going to be an interesting thing where they're going to tell, like, Who's your favorite writer? Comic book writer?
I don't.
Who, me?
Either. Both of you guys. Who's your favorite comic book writer?
I like Moore's writing.
Great.
That's about
I didn't
all I
say
like
art.
about Alan Moore.
I'm not talking about art.
Yeah, that's fucking. That's
Alan
the
Moore.
most
Okay,
real
again,
statement that's
Alan,
ever fucking
Alan
been
Moore
said,
might be
ladies and
the
gentlemen.
best possible thing you guys could have said. Okay? Because the things that Alan Moore wrote without any of the bullshit, any of the art, none of that. Like, you're talking about the writing. Far above the art. Okay? I really think that it's interesting in these TV shows on a whole that they are telling this Marvel Cinematic Universe story that we've been familiar with. We have seen the Ultimate Universe. We have seen Marvel 616. We've seen all the Infinite Crisis, the Infinite whatever fucking DC shit. We understand multiple universes as comic book characters. I think that this and some of the other Marvel shows have shown that we're just going to give you this universe. And I really hope that you're right. I honestly, I really hope that somehow Oscar Isaac dies in this next episode. I think that I want to throw this on James Kopp to say I think that James Kopp would respect this whole universe on a far deeper level if that happened, based on what we've seen so far in the Disney Plus television universe that we know. This is the first time from WandaVision to this. This is the first time we've ever gotten a supplemental to a movie universe ever in existence. In cinematic, artistic, whatever the fuck we want to call it, existence. This has never happened before.
Yeah,
Right?
Depends how you want to consider Daredevil and all the Netflix.
Please,
series.
I mean, please tell me.
But-
But I don't think that it is that quite, because they've always created a distance to your ABC,
no, absolutely.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and your Netflix Daredevil and all that shit. They've always
That's because
presented a distance to those things.
Well, that's because
Not happening anymore.
Joseph Loeb still had to include references to everything that's going on in the movie universe. Yes, Daredevil and Jessica Jones and all the other ones did still include those references, but they were still separate from it. But
Right.
Yeah,
They
this
could
is the
have been tossed aside. At any
This is the first one where it's not blatantly referenced for anything else. Everything that's been stated in this has taken place in other Marvel series or Marvel movies, but not tied in the way that the Marvel
Right,
TV
but
series were doing.
The things that they do in this, where those Towerette, say the name,
Tower.
says this is
I would also
an afterlife, but not the afterlife. Like,
I would also say good writing is good writing. My older brother, who's kind of a jock geek, had a hilarious line after Drink Up, because we're going to mention Guardians of the Galaxy 2 again. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, he joked about, if you told me this year I was going to watch Wolverine, Luke Skywalker, and Yondu die, who go back, and that's who died that year in cinema. And he was like, and I would have the strongest emotional connection to Yondu. If you had told me that as a child, I would be like, well, you're
Never.
stupid and full of shit. And it was like, no, the writers of Logan, the writers of The Last Jedi, no offense, pal. You had some interesting stuff, and then the writers of Guardians of the Galaxy. I even argued like some critiques on the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was like Yondu didn't need to say he's your papa but not your daddy. That was implied. How dare they write that? And I was like, motherfucker, you don't know what you're dealing with here. Because when we go to there is no gray area, it is just black and white, then you need to actually say it. So and that kind of falls like a little bit with this show. Moon Knight is not a character I care about. This is there are no stakes for me going into this. Us reviewing the show, there's no stakes. If Moon Knight's a success, oh, look at that, they did something good with a shitty character. If it's a flop, yeah, Moon Knight sucks. I knew that before I started watching this show.
Look, I think there's a conversation to be had about gatekeepers for these things right now. Like it's like they are creating a new universe for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and love it or hate it, wait 5 years and it will be different.
We can
just like comic books through your whole lifetime.
We can have that conversation after next episode when the series wraps up. But
yeah, and as a long-term gatekeeper, let me just say I couldn't be more for the gatekeeping of gatekeeping. If the gatekeeping. So you young kids out there did not get your ass kicked because you like Star Trek when you were a kid. Those of us that had to get our ass kicked because we like Star Wars and Star Trek don't give a shit that you look at us as gatekeepers. We don't respect you, and we don't care about you. So that's a huge element in it. I will say this: this might not register with a younger audience because I don't know really what the standards and practices are for modern day raising of children. But when the three of us grew up, it was perfectly acceptable for a parent to, what would be considered by today's standards, is abuse a child. And that wasn't seen as a villain, that was seen as parenting.
But here's the thing. I think that even though we can go to definitely varying degrees here, okay? Every generation can say that.
Okay, yeah.
Your parents, every single one of our parents, as much of a piece of shit they are, can say their parents before them, in today's standards, abuse the shit out of them too. Now, that doesn't discount the abuse they gave us, but it is a fact.
Just as we see in this Moon Knight episode with Mark versus Steven.
Yeah.
Which is he getting hit with a belt. I think
all of us got hit with a belt. There's not a single person here that didn't get hit with a belt.
Well, I was telling a quick story to some friends while I was out drinking when I was living in LA at one point, and we were talking about like abusive parents. And I was like, oh, I remember the time my dad picked up a chair and broke it over my back. And the whole table went quiet. And that's when I realized, oh, my level of abuse was different than your level of abuse.
I don't think it goes. We'll end with you because I feel like you're going to have the best, but I'll go in the middle. Like, I remember getting in trouble for something at school. I don't know what it was. The school called my house and said I did some shit that I wasn't supposed to do. I remember coming home. I remember going to sleep at night.
I'm already proud of you.
And I remember my dad waking me up in the middle of the night and being like, hey, I didn't whoop your ass for this earlier. So get up and I'm going to whoop your ass at whatever after you went to sleep. It may have been 15 minutes. It may have been 2 hours. I don't know. He was 21 years old at the time. 25 at best. Yes. Let's go down to Skid Row.
What I'm gonna say is for you younger audience, the younger audiences watching that might hear the stories of like these three Gen X white male privilege, and we have been given a certain amount of privilege in our lifetime, characterization of
100%.
these shows. What we had to live through is very different than what you had to live through, and that's not saying like one is greater than the other, but it is very, it does shine a light when we see an episode like this, like any more than if you were sexualized since you were a child and you see an episode on, you know, like some sort of beauty pageant show that kind of exposes that sort of thing. It was very easy for I'm just going to say everybody on this panel to watch this episode and go, we get it. I know why Steven's here, and I know why he has to die. And that's sad and depressing because Steven is our Scooby-Doo of this. He is our innocent. He is our hopeful character.
And kind of,
it's
if
like,
we don't have DID, we all did this in a way.
yeah.
We all delved into something that had nothing to do with what our parents or our family were, that we wanted to do.
A funny story about me and Chrissy's backstory is we were roommates for like the longest time. And one of the reasons why we were roommates is in high school, me and Chrissy here, Matt Christensen, didn't get along too well. And then, but he was always smart. He was always intelligent. He always had funny jokes. He had good comic delivery. And then I went and had dinner with him and his family. And I realized, holy shit, how did you come from these pieces of shit that raised you? And I like had this instant 120% respect for Matt Christensen, because I was like, I had my mom, and anybody who knows me will always say like, hey, I wish I had your mom. Like anybody who's met my mom is very much in love with my mom, and she adopts as we go along. She you know, she loves everybody. And anybody who had one bad parent growing up, which is most of the people from our generation, but some of us had two bad parents. And some of us not only had two bad parents, we had two life killing parents, where it was like, humans don't survive after this.
Right.
Having a dinner, a motherfucking dinner with Christensen's dad and his stepmom, I was like, I remember we went outside and I was like, we need to get you away from this. Like, and I was from an abused household. I was like from an abuse, and I was like, man, you got it rough. You got it fucking rough. Like, I was getting beat with chairs. Like a fucking stunt man, chairs being broken across my back, and even I was like,
Right.
you could do better.
This is a testament to Matt Christie being here right now, period. Okay, Matt, tell us. Tell us your.
This is some little.
I guess this is our prediction for Moon Knight. How did we lead up to this? Great. Tell us your prediction.
So no, I gave my prediction.
Based on
I
your
gave my
life
prediction.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I was a preteen, teenager, around the time my parents got divorced, I ended up living with my mom. House we lived in, it was a split. You remember this one, James, the one that's in the Oaks area? It was a split wing. My room was on one side of the house, while the rest of the bedrooms were on the other side of the house. And on that side of the house is the accessway to the laundry area and the garage and everything like that. With the excuse that it had to be so it wasn't seen by anybody coming into the house, despite the fact there was a sliding fucking door that blocked off that entire wing of the house. All of the dirty laundry in the house was kept in my bedroom, because it couldn't be kept in the hallway where the washing machine or anything is, because it could be seen by people, despite the fact that nobody who she invited over went to that part of the house. It had to be kept there. She wasn't home, leaving with my two brothers. who I didn't care much for. I mean, I've grown closer to one, not so much the other. It's just like I'm just tried to avoid and live my own life, but I couldn't because nobody was really taking care of them. Reached a point one day where I stood up to her and she slapped me across the face for it. And the biggest point for her was that on my 15th birthday, I was taken to Disneyland by my dad. Apparently my mom didn't want us to go. The next day, with her then boyfriend sitting in the living room, she goes and says to me, "I can't do this anymore," and then sent me off to live with my dad. My dad was
Like
slightly better.
Like you do if you're a parent. Like if you're taking notes, like about being a parent, that is right there what you do. That is what you do.
Yeah, that's what you to fuck people up. Like, again, like this was the thing where I loved. This is one of the things why I gave this episode such a big number is because it presented that here is another human being who lost their child for crazy circumstances, that because this other child was with them, you can be an asshole, you know? And sometimes we've all been assholes before. We've all 100% been an asshole in a situation where it's like, hey, maybe we should have reacted different to that. You know, like we've all been in that, maybe not to that extreme that they're showing us here, but a good show shows you those extremes. Man, I really had a good time with this episode, as much as I had a bad time with this episode. I think it's all we can say.
Matt, I know you, Christensen, I know we kind of cut you off here and there.
No.
You don't owe anybody an explanation about shit. As somebody who was there for different moments. At the same time, I do understand like why an episode like this would ring true. And for you young folks out there that might not understand this episode, I think to us older crowd, this episode really rang true.
Yeah.
You know, it's it may not be the world you're dealing with, but it's definitely the world that the Marks and the Stevens are dealing with.
Right. Like I'm not trying to say that I didn't have the least of the three. Like we have.
Oh yeah.
We have
different
extreme,
levels
middle,
of
like whatever.
everything.
Like just like you're saying, and we're all within, 3-4 years of each other, and we had a very similar situation, regardless of the extremes we may have went through in this to, make a connection, I guess is what I'm saying.
Next episode, huh?
I think it's time for a meme dump to make this all better.
Yeah.
Can we all do this at the same time?
Hey.
Let's laugh at some of the fucking pain, you pieces of shit.
Here's our memes.
Oh, that's
You
a good
devil, Bob!
one. Nothing better than reducing a super talented actor to a meme. Like that's just
That character was a meme, so whatever.
We should.
yeah, that's true.
That character was
That's God's gravy.
Yep.
Read it.
Yep. I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah, like we'll
Again,
talk
I
about
don't
that
know
after
how
the
many
next episode.
times I got a couple. I had a couple.
That scene especially when Steven's like, you know what? It wasn't your fault, and Steven just accepts. Yeah, there we go. Brought to you by Kettle One. That meme brought to you by Kettle One.
That's what I heard. That's what I fucking heard when this episode started. It was just booze showed up and was like, "Don't worry, pal, drink me."
Next one.
Glug glug glug.
What does that say?
You're an Alterino, Steven.
You're in Altarino, Steven. Again, the little Steven jokes, the Ned Flanders jokes are great.
Yes.
What else we got?
Moon Knight.
Yeah, this was mine because the fact that everything in this episode was very much like, this level of consciousness versus this level of consciousness. And I was just like, oh my God, we're getting a little too Inception-y for me.
There was a lot of very confusing, like there was a few moments where I was like, if I didn't know what the fuck was going on because I do this for a very terrible living, it would be pointless. Like you wouldn't know.
I
what the
just
fuck
had
is
a
going
drink
on.
that was mostly vodka, so how you doing? You want to talk about parental abuse? Moon Knight.
Hold
My
on.
vodka's cheaper than Kettle One.
Yeah.
Aw, Towit.
There you go.
Gets to one of those nice afterlives.
Yeah, King Hippo.
Well, apparently, like she's went on vacation to the ancestral realm.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Like that's what you do. That was one of the things that I loved about this. That I loved about a question that you brought up, James, about this whole series is like, hey, if all of a sudden all these gods are real, great, but they've taken that to such another level in Marvel universe. Like Thor's a god, but not really. Odin's a god, but not really. Now all these Egyptian gods, but not really. Now all of potentially the Greek gods from Eternals and all that shit.
Yeah.
But not really. It's like, hey, what we know it was said in the very first Thor movie that has continued to be true. What you see as magic is really just our technology.
Yep.
Like
I
we
get that.
understand it as a natural thing. You don't. Period.
I get that, but there is a subconscious level of reality that we are not dealing with, that society and especially America needs to deal with. Is there an afterlife or not? Because that decides how you act on this world.
Again, they presented in this that there are multiple afterlives.
Well,
Why
they did that
is the new question?
That line and section of this episode very much felt like, okay, Texas and Florida, take a seat back. Heaven is still real. And you get 50 ponies when you get to fucking heaven. I promise you. That's what that line felt like to me. I didn't care for it. It very much felt like a producer's note.
I think with this meme and that moment, you get that, hey, it depends on what you believe in.
Yeah. And so that to me didn't mean any much of anything. If this is your only life, really, I hate to pull a John Lennon card on everybody, but let's just imagine there's no afterlife and there's no any religion, and this is it. Are you happy with what you did?
Yes.
Are you happy and content with what you brought forward in society?
I agree.
Or did you do nothing and you just went along with what you were told to do?
Yep.
Which is a existential question, I think, that attacks all of us. And
but still, the ancestral plane.
It's a nice place.
It's a nice place.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go on vacation,
ancestral plane.
purple, one of my favorite colors. Move on. What do we got here?
I mean, it's not there when you cease to
Read it
exist.
to everyone,
okay.
Matt.
Kano likes this. Molaround likes this.
That's right. Mola.
What am I looking at? What am I looking at here?
He's
When you
she's
take
taking
the
the
hearts
hearts out. So both Kano listen, I'm going to over-explain this for people. Kano from Mortal Kombat is going to love
Ripping the
pulling the
heart
hearts out.
Yeah.
Molaron from Temple of Doom is going to like taking the hearts out.
Nice.
Yep. Well, I mean, you have to explain the second one now to most people, so.
It's fine. Moving on.
There we go.
There you go. We already went to this.
Yep. Not,
You know, it's definitely a truly thing. Whenever you know anybody that's got like past trauma in their history, and when you watch something that's definitely about dealing with past trauma, I think it's very human to like think of them as it goes on. This was a tough one because I think so many of us have the exact past trauma that Mark and Steven are dealing with. Not to bump up Christensen at all, but like your past trauma is far worse than their.
Like Disney,
you dealt with more
Disney
shit than they had
higher.
to deal with.
Listen, we're cheap. We're cheap. But just like you said, it's that moment where you can give me you can give me something that a lot of people can, even if it's not mom, even if it's not dad, even if it's not uncle or whoever it is, brother, sister. Like, you're going to be able to relate to this in a way. I do truly feel like that because we've just discussed 3 very different experiences to still have a very hard emotional reaction to this.
And I'll say this about the 3 people that are reviewing this. I was beat the shit out of my whole life by my father. And I went and had dinner with Matt Christensen's father and stepmom for an hour. And I was like, this is unacceptable. From a kid that got a chair broken over his back and like fucking beat to death. I was like, hey, just so you know, you're getting a raw deal here. So I'll say that if nobody else collects it,
and in the continuation of saying, I will be that fucking angry after I walk away.
Yeah,
Just
well,
that's
so-
the
the
situation.
I went and had dinner one time with Matt Christensen's dad and stepmom, and I was like, you need to get out of this. And this was in the 90s, way before a holistic medicine or vaccines causes autism or anything like that. I was very much like, whatever this is so fucking toxic. I, who am a product of toxic environment, was like, you need to get out of this to save yourself. So,
And congratulations. Now you're on Canoodle Studios being abused by myself and James Kopp weekly.
And just so we're clear, because Jesse's not here, I made this myself. So I did this to myself.
There you go.
and if Jesse is watching this, we greatly miss you.
Yes.
Because we suck at making memes, and we can't even keep the show on the air without you. So
Barely.
we love you, Jesse.
Barely.
All right, let's keep going.
This
Yeah.
is pretty much how I felt about the episode. I actually
Heavy.
sent this meme. I sent this meme off before I finished the episode. Because I was like 45 minutes into the episode, and I was like, we had suicide, we had child death,
Mm-hmm.
and we had trauma that there is questionable move on from. And then they crack a Ned Flanders joke. And I was like, I get that. I totally get you wanting to undercut things after we have, but you literally
They
had your
do
lead
have-
character with a gun next to his head after he had killed his child brother.
Disney
And so
has
this-
0 problems with the hard cuts.
No.
Like, oh, some terrible shit just happened. Guess what? We're at the gate, motherfucker. Remember you're on this boat, but it's not really a boat, but remember it's a boat because we're going to a gate because we got to go through. The hippo lady said so. And is this thing balanced? And do we have our hearts that are crystals that have no blood, that are not full? I don't know what's happening right now. Like, there's a lot of that going on throughout this episode, as much as I love it. goddamned. Like, yeah.
So real quick, in this meme, so that there's no question later, we're dealing with child death,
A dead child, yeah.
dead child depression,
An abused child, yes.
suicide,
Yes.
and Ned Flanders.
Yep.
Hi diddly doodly.
It's fun. It's fun when you look up those terms on the internet and see what comes up.
Oh yeah, I want to see that.
Good time.
And
Not
then-
at all porn,
Yeah. And,
which is
What else do we have?
well, then we have the alternate take on this, which is this one. A little
There
more
it is.
lighthearted. A little
Well,
more.
I
little
wrote
more
this
David
one
Carradine.
after I finished the episode.
And you
The last one,
and you thought you'd cut out two of the worst things and leave abuse.
We have the start
Stand
and the
people.
end. The start's a little more fun. The end's the same. It'll be fine.
Because you like referring to Tawet as a hungry, hungry hippo. And then Ned Flanders still.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ned Flanders is mentioned by name.
I know,
so
no, I know.
It's we feel
Fantastic.
validated with that.
Fantastic.
Oh shit, we gave away next episode.
I don't see it. I'm gonna call it right now. He's never gonna make an appearance. He's never gonna make an
But-
appearance.
Well, he did. He did.
But just
Oh,
because we
lies.
made this meme, I would love it. I would fucking 5.5 your ass fucking James Kopp. I would 5.5 full moon and a half, motherfucker, right now if he shows up in the next episode.
So what this is, and I'll tell you right now, it's because I actually, after I watch an episode, I watch other reviews to see if I agreed with the other reviewers. And every other reviewer for the last 2 episodes have been like, Kane showing up. Kane is there. He's obviously there. They've talked, and there's been no Kane reference. I don't care. I don't like, actually, if you look at the face of this Egyptian statue, nope, there's been no Kane. There's been no Kane. I won't accept it. And everybody it's like our Mistopheles thought, which is really Smokin' Phat Jay's Mistopheles
Mephisto?
thought.
Mephisto?
Mephisto.
Yeah, Mephisto is gonna show up, but it's like he's not. He's
It's
not.
also how Kang showed up in Loki. Kang didn't show up until
Episode six.
episode 6 of Loki. And all of a sudden it was just like, okay. But it was that weird thing where it was like, again, we're setting up a larger ideal in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I
Yeah.
think some people can sit with, some people can't, but I think most hardcore comic book people should be able to do, because we've seen Marvel 616, we've seen the Ultimate Universe, we've seen Spider-Man 2099, we've seen all these, we understand how this shit works, okay? So when you present it to us, as long as it's presented in an interesting way, we will like it. But how do we parse that from what we already know?
Yeah.
How? How, Matt?
Both Mephisto,
Matt Christensen, tell me how.
both,
God damn it.
both Mephisto and Kang are showing up next episode.
Get out.
Just an episode about them. All right, bye.
You need to be on the other side of that canoodle wall right now that we built. All right. What's next?
The first video was intended for last week, but if you're catching us here, we had worse problems last week, so you didn't see any of the memes last week. But this one didn't show up, so it's new, regardless.
New.
All right.
Did you hear it?
Did you hear the sound at all, James?
No, I don't. But
Oh,
it's
it was
very-
it was the Zelda opening the treasure chest.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From New Breath
So.
of the Wild.
Yep. Aaron, you can explain that.
There it is. There it is. It's
I'm a
Robin
little
Williams
upset
from
we
Hook.
have not seen. In the last episode, we did see blue zombies, and I really want my payoff of blue zombies.
want more
and
blue
I don't
zombies?
think I'm gonna get it.
Again, there's a lot of zombies. Sand zombies, they're like all of a sudden blue zombies to sand zombies.
Jackal
And
zombies.
Give me
A
something.
lot of those zombies looked very Zack Snyder fucking zombies in that shit. Am I wrong?
No.
No. But you know what's fun is who? Do you know who the writer was for Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead?
No. Who?
James Gunn, writer and director of Guardians of the Galaxy
Yeah.
1 and 2. Let's
Great.
take a drink.
Drink.
It has nothing to do with Moon Knight episode 5. Moving on.
Not
Next
at all.
one. Next one.
But he still
at all.
looks like him.
Okay, there's music. There's the music playing with this too. but
What
in
is
ca-
the music? Tell us.
It's the music that you hear in the episode. So that's this. But in case you're wondering where you've seen this scene before, maybe this.
Yeah, totally.
What is that from?
Which really makes me awkward
That's
that
gladiator.
films keep
Yeah.
serving us this because for those of us who don't know what wheat is or how it works, if I end up in if I die and I'm a good
Literally
person
the
and
new
I
Final
end up
Fantasy
in a field of wheat, I can be a little annoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I don't even know what wheat does. It makes bread, I guess.
Sure.
it does. It does.
Sure,
If
whatever.
you do it in a bowl and a rock, your teeth are gonna rot.
Well, I didn't see a field of bowl and rocks, so all I saw was a field of fucking wheat. So I don't know what I'm doing with it.
All right. All right.
All right, we got one more.
Yeah.
Last one.
Wait, Steven! Run! Wait! Run, keep coming! Keep the fuck
We gotta make fun of the great memories we had in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is just depressing.
Just wait.
You're not the lead, pal. You're fake. Ah, Jesus.
What is it, James Kopp? What is this movie?
Well, this would be Return to Oz. Which is I love that. I don't know. I can't hear the sound for those watching at home. But I can assume that they decided to connect a horrific film with pointless deaths to Steven's death. That makes sense. Yeah. Depressingly enough, that plays.
Do you know this movie? I just
Return to Oz? Yes, I
made
know
my
that movie.
wife watch
watched-
this movie within the last month.
I watched it when I was a kid.
I did.
Same.
It scared me a lot. The Wheelers scared me a lot.
Well, even as a kid, I think I was obsessed with subtext before I knew it. And so when Return to Oz proved that she went to a mental ward and was getting shock therapy after Wizard of Oz.
It has a lot to do with this episode,
Yeah.
right?
But I was like, as a kid, not ready to process that. I was like, oh, all the things I love are fake. And
Mhm.
you need to be fucking tortured to come back to reality.
It was almost like they played that tiny bit of subtext from Wizard of Oz real hard in the paint on Return to Oz. But all of us were about 8 to 10 years old at that time, and we were scarred by that. I think
Yeah.
that's what we're saying. So
Yeah.
this made a lot of sense in Moon Knight episode 5 because of that.
Funny tangential for you, James, is Return to Oz is the whatever the evil woman's character name was, her head detached and everything like that. Scary
did.
as fuck for that movie.
Yeah.
Around the same time is when The Adventures of Baron Munchausen came out.
Yes.
It's hilarious to see Robin Williams and what's her
Yes.
name have their heads come off of her.
Also, if you remember on Return to Oz, her chicken laid an egg in the rock person's mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and that was what saved
You can actually,
the whole universe.
Christensen brought up a good point, which is like you can actually compare a Return of Wizard of Oz to the Adventures of Baron Munchausen on a subtext level
Mm-hmm.
of what is important, what isn't. The Adventures of Baron Munchausen is about fantasy, is how we save ourselves. Baron Munchausen does stuff that's fantastical, but it saves everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And the Return of Wizard of Oz is all about how fantasy ends up with us in an insane asylum being fucking electrocuted.
No, getting away from the electrocution, and Auntie Em comes and saves you at the end. I just watched it like maybe 3 weeks ago. All right.
Okay.
She gets away from it. It is
Oh, good for her.
100%.
Good for her.
I'm laying my dick all over the first subtext I laid, but you know, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's got the chick from The Craft, so we're good.
Ah, yeah.
And Waterboy,
Yeah.
girl from Waterboy. It's great. What else do we have?
That is great.
That was it.
You finished everything?
I finished that off. So.
All right. Listen, for all the shit we've talked through this whole episode, we all gave this close to a 5.
Yeah.
At
A
least.
higher rating.
If you were doing statistics, it would be a 5 because you'd round up.
All right. So join us next week. Until then,
I'm Matt Christy.
No, tell me who I am.
You are Smokin' Phat J.
Okay, who are you?
I'm Matt Christy.
Who's that guy?
That guy's James Kopp.
Can we just end this?
Sure.
Okay, great. Listen, ladies and gentlemen.
Just like the episode Moon Knight did. It's over
Thank
now.
you. Yeah, it's over. Hey, can anyone make their ears wobble like a hippo?
No, I'm not that cute.
Okay. Jesse is back on Saturday. He'll maybe make that happen. We don't know.
Thank God.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm Smokin' Phat J, Matt Christy, James Kopp. We appreciate you guys joining us here on Working on the Night Moon. Join us next week for the season finale right here on Canoodle Studios. Let me do this because it makes things happen. We could do this, and then we do this again. It didn't do it. Can we do this?
Do that one. Do that button.
Bye.
There we go.